staying around about average for the time of year.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to win Christmas on Us this year. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag will get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2 or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes and Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night, and this is the Influenza 5. No, I'm joking, it's a 5, but I have got a cold, I do warn you. I'm Darren Grimes, along with Dr. Renee, Will Kingston, Kai Wilshaw and Alex Armstrong. Tonight on the show...
Lamentable lammies gotta go.
A pogrom has arrived in mainland Europe.
The real reason behind Labour's farmer assault.
Are white lefty liberals destroying our country?
And nutty Switzerland rips rights from Muslims.
It's 6 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. A very warm welcome to the Saturday 5, where we tear through the week's nonsense with the grace of a drunk Geordie on roller skates. And tonight, you're in for a treat. First off, grab your seatbelt. Britain's farms, they're being flogged off to fund the net zero fantasy. That's right, my friends. The land that puts food on your plate is now a bargaining chip for the Eco Brigade. Who needs food, they say? Well, don't worry, you'll get a lovely carbon footprint graph instead. Give me strength. Then we've got the big Trump win across the pond, and Labour's breaking into a cold sweat like a vegan at a hog roast. Trump's back. He's larger than life. He's shaking things up like one of those McDonald's salt shakers. And you can almost hear the wailing from the Islington elite. Somewhere there's a Labour strategist clutching their quinoa and herbal tea, muttering, "Not him again." It's like they're watching a horror film, but Trump's the one wielding the chainsaw against the West's wild woke. And what about Labour's latest masterstroke? They're banging on about a 4-day working week. It's very important to them, folks, because Sir Keir Starmer, well, he needs an extra day to try on his latest finds from Lord Ali Bye-Bye. And meanwhile, productivity's diving faster than a seagull after a chip. It's like a bad sitcom where Labour's the bumbling main character, clueless, but somehow convinced that they're saving the day. And just when you think it couldn't get any dafter, here we all are, free bus passes for illegal migrants, while you and I are expected to pay up. It's Labour's latest big idea. Their slogan, my friends, for the illegal, not the indigenous. You couldn't make it up. Now, my friends, I wonder what they're putting in their tea. It's no wonder like, loads of them want to legalise drugs, I tell you. Nuttier than a Glaswegian pub at closing time. But joining me today, I've got Will Kingston, our specky podcaster from Down Under. He's here to bite into the issues like a great white on a surfboard. We've got Dr Renee, always brightens my day, ready to diagnose Labour's delusions before they can even say net zero. She's the only voice of reason in the room, if reason hasn't packed up and left already. Alex Armstrong from London, but miracle of all miracles, my friends, he's got none of that metropolitan moaning. It's, well, he's as rare as a hen's tooth. And last but certainly loudest, Kai will show, the Welsh whaler himself. He's woke enough to power the national grid. He's the Blairite babe who'll defend Sir Keir in the hopes that Santa's left a few trinkets from Lord Ali in his Christmas stocking. Just don't ask him the difference, my friends, between a man and a woman. It's not on the syllabus at Blairite HQ. Now grab yourself a cuppa or something stronger. You'll need it when Kai gets going, I'll tell you that. Strap yourself in. This is the Saturday 5, where the show where common sense gets a seat at the table and the week's absurdities are stripped bare and then some. You know the drill. Each host outlines their argument about a chosen topic, then we'll all pile in and the first starts to fly. Get me your views, send them in to gbnews.com/your say. Much more important than our gobs. And don't forget to ask your questions for Ask the Five. There's no topic off limits. But before we start tearing each other apart, here's your Saturday night news with Sophia Wensler.
Darren, thank you. Good evening. It's just gone 6 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. The Queen is set to miss remembrance events this weekend to ensure she makes a full recovery from a chest infection. Queen Camilla had hoped to join the royal family at the Royal British Legion Festival of Remembrance this evening and to honour the war dead at the Remembrance Sunday ceremony on Whitehall. This comes as Buckingham Palace has said the Princess of Wales would attend both the Remembrance Sunday service at the Cenotaph and the Festival of Remembrance at the Royal Albert Hall tonight. Boris Johnson has suggested that Donald Trump would certainly do a trade deal with the UK. The former Prime Minister said the US President-elect is offering economic hope, but that the government would be too pathetic to try to secure a deal. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage said the UK needs to roll out the red carpet for Trump and that America is our most important relationship in terms of trade. Farage also said he would help mend fences between Sir Keir Starmer's government and the incoming Trump administration, following tensions over previous comments.
This is a pro-British American president. That gives us potentially huge opportunities if we can overcome the difficulties that the whole of the cabinet have been rude about him. I might be useful as an interlocutor, unofficially, behind the scenes, to try and help mend some of those fences. If the government choose to use me, I would do that, not because I support the Labour government, but because I believe in something called the national interest.
Meanwhile, Joe Biden has invited Donald Trump to meet him in the White House next week. The sitting president and the president-elect will meet in the Oval Office on Wednesday. The post-election invitation is a tradition held between the outgoing and incoming presidents. To the Middle East now, where Qatar has threatened to stop mediating a Gaza ceasefire and hostage release deal until Hamas and Israel show a sincere willingness to return to the negotiating table. Officials have told Hamas that it will no longer host its political office unless the terrorist group and Israel engage in constructive and meaningful talks. The Gulf country has served as a mediator between the two sides since the conflict began last October after Hamas's attacks on Israel. And back in the UK, the Deputy President of the NFU, David Exwood, has said there's many things wrong with the budget and that it's threatened food supplies. This comes as farmers are planning a protest in central London on the 19th of November. It's in response to Rachel Reeves's changes to inheritance tax on farmers. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers, Sophia. It's Saturday night, my friends, and you're with the Saturday 5. I thank you very much for your company. I'm Darren Grimes, and I can promise that you're in for a very lively show. We're going to crack on with tonight's first debate. Which one of you...
Oh, that was fast.
That with purpose. She means business. Take it away, Dr. Renee.
I do indeed. So, never again is happening, and the Liberal left are refusing to look. This week, there have been the most appalling scenes in Amsterdam when an Israeli football team went to play football. There were some vile scenes between both sides before the match, but it's what happened post-match that any normal, decent human being should recoil at horror at. We've got some footage. It is distressing, so look away if you think that it will upset you.
Fils de pute! Charmota! Benzona! So rampaging gangs of Middle Eastern men hunted Amsterdam down for Jewish men to attack. They organised themselves via Telegram and via a taxi app. And in fact, one taxi driver decided to use his taxi as a weapon to run a Jewish man over. We have that clip too. Again, look away if you're upset easily. So, Jewish people were forced to run, to hide, to seek refuge wherever they could, just like they did on October the 7th, and just like they did in 1938 Germany, on this very day then, in Kristallnacht. A pogrom where 7,000 Jewish businesses were destroyed, where 30,000 Jewish men were rounded up and sent to concentration camps to their death. And we know where this ended. It ended with 6 million Jewish people being murdered in concentration camps. And it also ended with the world saying, never again. Well, never again has never been closer than just again. And we are seeing that Jews are being hunted down on our streets. Every weekend we are allowing hate marches where slogans such as from the river to the sea, jihad, and especially globalise the infidada are being given free passage as the Metropolitan Police and the lefty Liberals look the other way. Well, you know what globalise the infidada is? It's what happened in Amsterdam this week. It's what happened on October the 7th. And if this isn't enough to make the Liberals uncover their eyes and take their fingers out of their ears, we are going to see this on our streets until there's only one group of people left.
Well, yeah, kiss goodbye to your nice, hard-fought-for rights and liberties, eh? I heard yesterday on this very channel, there was a certain someone on the panel, this one here, and there were certain excuses made, shall we say. Context needed, and also, oh, well, it was a football game. Listen, Renee, I've attended many football games, and I have never, hand on heart, never sought out an ethnic group and looked at passports, all the rest of it, in the name of football hooliganism. I've never heard of that happen. No. You know, I don't... Well, I've been known to scout out a Sunderland T-shirt now and then, but I've never kicked the living hell out of anyone.
And we saw this week, we saw these protesters standing outside a Jewish community centre where I live, shouting at elderly people as they walked by, making elderly women cry. We are hunting out Jewish people. We're not far from the next step. And I'm afraid this is the anti-Semitism that's acceptable to the Liberal left for some weird reason.
What do you think, I mean, it's going to take then for people like Kai to wake up?
Well, if Amsterdam isn't that thing, then I don't think anything will. This was an organised attack on a Jewish group. Imagine it was the other way around. Imagine they were hunting out black people. Imagine.
What was really interesting, just like I say about what the panel, was this was a big thing last night. Obviously, it was clipped up. I know a lot of people tuned in. A lot of the context that was supposedly added, and I have to say I wasn't one of those people. I was trying to give some extra details on the story. A lot of the context that were added were saying this is what a football hooliganism looks like, and I was saying, I don't know how many football fans get run over in a taxi after a football game. That would be, in most cases, extremists.
That have used an app to find out where they are.
Well, hang on, Kai, I've got to bring you in. What do you mean?
Renee, you know that I think this is horrifying, all right? I can't believe that we've got to the point where the Israeli government is sending rescue planes full of medical personnel to try and get their Israeli citizens home. Thankfully, I think the majority of them have.
Citizens.
But you know, I don't think that's right. I think it's horrifying. But let's not draw a direct line from something that happened in Amsterdam and then the largely very, very peaceful protests that have happened in our streets here. Now, you look at the arrests that have been taking place, 17, I think, in October, after the peaceful protest of tens of thousands of people through London, 4 in July. I think it's a testament to the fact that the UK has such a strong peaceful protesting culture that actually these things haven't been seen in the UK, and I don't think we will. But
well, fascism starts peacefully. This is the problem. Fascism starts peacefully. It starts with people protesting a certain thing, and this happened with the Nazis. They protested so-called peacefully, in air quotes, and their freedom of speech allowed them to get more and more aggressive rhetoric, and they were emboldened because they weren't as quickly tackled.
I want to hear you expand on that a little bit more, but my concern is the kinds of things that you care about, like LGBT equality and all the rest of it, they aren't supported by some of what I would describe as theological fascists. And they are the kinds of people that are out supporting Hamas and cheering them on the streets of London. That is happening in the United Kingdom.
I don't think that's true of the vast majority of British Muslims. You can't conflate the views of different countries where some of these people migrated from and so on with British Muslims. I mean, that is going too far.
If I was on that march and I saw people with signs that have been on that march celebrating the Houthis bombing our sailors, globalising Intifada, I would leave. I would leave the march.
And that's fair enough, but that's so few isolated incidents of that happening. And we always find them, and that's right that those people would be arrested. But that's not the majority of people. The majority of people at those protests won't see any such thing.
You know, when the first marches took place in London, I put out a clip that was from London. It was actually by the people who were protesting, and they said there's one very strong clip that stays in my mind. They said, "We want to hunt down Jews and spill their blood." So we know there's people who aren't just football hooligans who are going out causing this.
Will, is the point here not that Amsterdam, you know, when I think of Amsterdam, I automatically think of Anne Frank, right? That's where my head goes. Now, if you think about the persecution of people like Anne for the simple fact that she was Jewish, sought out and ultimately exterminated as a child at the hands of the Nazi regime. Now, to me, that we are heading back to those dark days. I genuinely think that that's the case, that's happening. And if it can happen in Amsterdam, it can happen here, surely.
Well, it's the same ideological strand that runs through the liberal left across
Sydney, outside the Opera House, they were shouting "Gas the Jews"
across the world now. And the really galling thing for me about this whole saga is that this liberal left haven't been afraid to call out fascists or to call out, you know, so-called Hitler 2.0, but that's been in the case of Donald Trump, where it is not a fascist, where it is not someone who is akin to Hitler. When they actually do see genuine, awful displays of fascism in this day and age, they put their head in the sand. And I find that moral duplicity to be, quite frankly, disgusting.
I don't think anybody's putting their head in the sand. I certainly am not. Look, there's obviously more to do, but let's not also, when we're talking about oppressed minorities, let's also not take this as a moment as a stick to beat Muslims with either.
I would love.
I want to hear what Kai has to say. Reduce the rights of Muslims in this country who are here, integrating into society.
So you would say it's important.
I think to use that.
It's important to talk about the fact that it's Islamophobia Awareness Month and highlight those issues, the kind of issues that Sadiq Khan has highlighted recently.
Those are important, as well as highlighting atrocities committed against Jews in this country. I'm not pretending that this isn't horrific and that we could get there in this country. And at that point, I think violence needs to be quelled immediately.
Would you say that Islamophobia is the biggest threat facing the United Kingdom right now?
No. There are obviously so many important threats. I think actually probably the threats against Jewish people are much more present that I see at the minute in our streets. But Islamophobia is also important. We can't let this be a road towards that. We can't let that sort of extremism take root just because we have these competing minority groups.
I'm so sick of this word, Islamophobia. Islam is a choice. A religion is a choice that you make. You should be allowed to criticise someone's beliefs that they have made, and we, for some reason, are now equating it with race, which is something which should be off limits.
We don't have blasphemy laws.
Islamophobia is a nonsense.
Yeah, we don't have blasphemy laws in this country.
I'm afraid.
Well, we do now.
De facto. Yeah, well, there's blasphemy laws for one religion, certainly. Anyway, right, we'll leave that there. I'm sure there's plenty of views coming in thick and fast at home, but still to come tonight, we'll discuss the relationship between David Lammy and Donald J. Trump. But next, illegal migrants have been moved into a hotel in Altrincham in Greater Manchester. There could be up to 300 of them. And, well, I tell you what, residents ain't too happy. Is the United Kingdom now just a dumping ground for illegal migrants? It's hard to conclude anything else. You're with the Saturday 5 and we're live on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Well, drinkers have been warned about a drop in the quality of French wines after poor weather conditions hit this year's grape harvest. Winemakers across France will make 240 million fewer bottles of wine this year, the country's farming ministry said on Tuesday. So should we think of switching from French to English? I'm joined now by sommelier and founder of Inflorescence Wines, Jacinta Madison-Williams. Hello, Jacinta.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. First of all, let's just think about the poor French. Has this been a fairly universal weather catastrophe for France?
It has. Kind of across the board, we're about 22% down on last year's crops, which is quite significant. I think it's like one of the 4 years over the last century that have been this low. So,
and it's affected both quality and quantity?
I would say more so quantity. There's always ways of counteracting quality. It depends if people are desperate to make wine. They can obviously push out more watered down grapes. There's been a lot of rain, if you hadn't noticed. Not only in France, we felt it here too. But lots of frost, supercell hailstorms have completely wiped out some crops. So in some cases, there's nothing to make. In other cases, it's just really watered down grapes and you want to pick earlier to make sure you're avoiding all those rains. But I would say more so it's quantity. But saying that, France is still the biggest producer of wine in the world. It might be taken over by Spain this year, but as a consumer, don't panic. We're not going to run out of wine. And we obviously have lots of lovely wine growing here now in England. So whether we do make a little jump for a bit to English wine, but there's definitely still lots out there.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes and Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry, Tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for your emails about tonight's topics. Even this one. Andrew says Darren's monologues are the most wonderful mixture of high camp and populist conservatism. Iconic. I mean, Andrew, you're making me sound like a sort of right-wing Mr. Humphreys. Gerald says one of the reasons the arrests are so low is because the police are letting a lot of illegal behaviour slide rather than intervening.
Absolutely.
You're right. I think a lot of people,
I agree,
especially in London, don't fear any consequences. Right. Now, though, it's time for our next debate. Which one of you is going next?
This is all me. This is all me. Well, this week, 300 illegal migrants were dropped off at a hotel in Altrincham, Manchester. Now, the community has been in absolute uproar over this. And here's why. It's 2 minutes walk to a primary school, and it's a 10-minute walk to an all-girls school. But why don't we take a quick look at what the police had to say to that local community?
Today, I can assure you we've had asylum seekers in Trafford for several years, and there has been no spike in crime, there has been no increase in crime that's attributed to these asylum seekers.
Well, I appreciate that the police officer is just doing his job. You know, I'm sure that was a pretty hard, graph to put out there that day. But the reality is when we compare that to how the police dealt with the Muslim community during the riots, it's pretty stark. Not only that, but it does feel like those local residents were being gaslit, because we all know that when 300, all men, by the way, show up in a location, particularly in the legal migrant community, I'm not saying they're all criminals, but crime does go up. It's a fact. We've seen it with our own eyes. And the local community are outraged. They had no consultation, not a single notice. Not a single notice. That police officer only showed up after those migrants had appeared. But let's have a little look at the star of the show.
A lot of the posts on social media have been racist. I think when you're saying that refugee and asylum-seeking men should be vetted to make sure that they're not paedophiles, I think that's racist.
Unbelievable. Sorry, she's a moron. And I think she represents the disgusting white liberal loser left that are destroying our country. To say that it's racist to vet for paedophilia when 300 men show up with a 2-minute walk to a primary school and a 10-minute walk to an all-girls school. So I'm asking tonight, are the woke, white, liberal left of our country, the losers, ruining, destroying Britain?
Yep.
Kai, should we start with you?
I won't take too kindly to that characterisation. I mean, I think you know that that's not what she was trying to say. Right?
I don't think that is,
No.
No.
When you have a camera shoved in front of your face, as many of us know, I think, you say some stupid things,
all right. Well, hang on,
but,
Kai. Would you argue that not everyone crossing the channel is dangerous?
No, I wouldn't say that all of them are dangerous.
Right.
But of course, some will be. Some will be. But the Home Office does vet the people crossing the channel.
No, they don't.
They do.
You can't. Hang on. You cannot vet undocumented migrants. You can't vet them. How?
And I think you know that she didn't mean to say that. What she wanted to say was the implication that all of these people are criminals is racist. And I think that is right.
Explain how the Home Office vets people, because there was a man that came here having killed someone in Europe and arrived here, and we had ignored the fact that Italy had
like that, Darren. You know that. And the reason we're in this situation is because there are 119,000 asylum seekers in a backlog left by the ridiculous Tory government who stopped processing of asylum seekers.
Do you remember the case of Tom at the nightclub bouncer who was wanting to be a Royal Marine, and he was stabbed to death by a migrant that had come here illegally, who had been killed someone in Europe, arrived here, and he's now banged up at His Majesty's pleasure.
I don't think that's right.
Yeah.
You know I don't think that's right. But there's a reason why we're here, and I don't see. But I don't see what the alternative is. Where are you going to take
just very briefly, Kai. There's a very simple way to disprove what you're saying here, and it's the fact that we know that when migrants come to the country, they throw their passports at any documentation they have in the water and plead asylum. We don't know where they're coming from. We don't know their criminal backgrounds, and we are the first country that will possibly ever give them some form of criminal record that can be carried across the West.
But that being by the by, let's say in Kai's ideal world, they have got their ID and we can check them. And apparently it's racist to check them to see if they're a paedophile. When you want to do a job in the UK, be it a care worker, a doctor, a nurse, work in a GP factory, work in a school, you have to be vetted. Is that racist?
No, I'm not the one saying it is racist. I'm saying the implication, the assumption that all of these people are racist.
Do you know what? We shouldn't be surprised, though, Renee. We shouldn't be surprised, because this is the party, these are the people that said that showing your ID at the ballot box, that's racist.
But I want
It's
to...
racist. It's racist to do that. The post office, when they do that, a copper pulling you over in your car, it's not racism then. But when it comes to actually the integrity of the ballot box or the integrity of Britain's borders and keeping your girls safe, then it's racist.
Darren, can I pick up on this point from Kai that this is just going to happen? It's a necessary evil as a result of these people being here. There's a very big difference between, say, a British citizen committing a crime, which unfortunately we can't just boot them out of the country. That's citizenship. Every single crime that is committed by someone that comes on a boat is a choice by the government, and every single crime that comes from one of those citizens is therefore avoidable. I don't for a second accept that this is just a necessary evil that we have to tolerate. If we actually get our borders under control, those crimes go away.
But if we go ahead with your line of reasoning, right, what we are doing is looking at people with some of the most harrowing stories.
Oh, come on.
No. Let me finish.
Yeah.
Some of the most harrowing stories of people trafficking, seeing people in front of their very eyes drowning in the Channel. And
well, they wouldn't have drowned if they'd have stayed in France,
we're taking a handful of criminals who absolutely should be banged up for what they do, and then that has massive implications for actually the vast majority of peaceful asylum seekers who have had horrible lives and who are just here to make their lives better and to contribute back to society.
Well, let me just quickly challenge one other thing, because I think this is really important. Did Keir Starmer not say just a few weeks ago that the hotel policy of putting migrants up in hotels was over? It was ended.
Yeah. Well, obviously...
Is this another U-turn, Kai?
Well, I'll have to put my hands up. I mean, look, I'm a member of the Labour Party. I'm not a member of the shadow cabinet. But look, I mean, obviously they're dealing with a ridiculous situation. He's gone. He's U-turned again. I admit that.
Because he didn't know what he was doing before the election, did he?
But
Labour didn't really have a plan. They had a lot of rhetoric.
I do agree that the comms has been rubbish. They should have consulted this community, but they have to go somewhere. They have to go somewhere. And to think that one community can choose over others.
I watched that video, and there's a woman at the start, Kai, and she says, we don't know anything about these people, we don't know what's coming here. And then there's a fella that says, I've got a daughter, blah, 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 and they're worried about that. Do you not, there's no part of you, Kai, that can reach out and have sympathy for those people that live in a genuine fear? That's not xenophobia. That, to me, is completely rational.
And I don't think they're being racist at all. I don't think they're being xenophobic.
Well, that woman just said
I feel a lot of sympathy for that community, but I also am asking you to have sympathy for some of the asylum seekers who have come here by no choice of their own.
It is by choice of their own. They found the 5,000 quid to get in a dinghy and come over the English Channel.
I think I probably would as well if I lived in Syria.
I think the police have...
Where's the quid from? If you're living in Syria, in squalor and all the rest of it, where do you think all that's coming from? The fact of the matter, they've travelled through an entire continent with the Schengen zone, which is apparently meant to be unique to these members of the European Union, are being used by blind and willful liberal idiots. at the behest of migrant gangs.
And I'll add, once you pass through a safe country, you instantly, and then go to, say, the United Kingdom, you become an economic migrant. We know, as a matter of fact, this isn't an opinion, and most of the people that are arriving by boats are economic migrants. There's one other thing that I need to tidy up in this morass, and that is the amount of people that are drowning on boats, and that is a direct consequence of not having a strong deterrent in place. The failure of the United Kingdom to protect their borders and the deaths at sea are fundamentally a result of people having an incentive to come.
Well, the fact that these men are all being put into hotels shows there is an incentive still there. Right, they're being fed while our pensioners are punished. They are put up in cosy hotels.
Well, don't worry, they'll be whizzing around London for free now. Right, still to come tonight, I'm going to take on inheritance tax. That hike for farmers, what's it all about? I know. But next, we'll discuss the relationship between David Lammy and Donald Trump. What does it mean for the special relationship? You're with the Saturday 5. We're live on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's been a cloudy day for most of us, as it has been over the past couple of weeks, but there is some brighter interludes on the way as we head in towards next week. But before we get there, these weather fronts out towards the west of the UK will slowly push their way eastwards over the rest of the weekend before we see high pressure redeveloping and bringing us some brighter weather. Back to Saturday evening though, and generally a cloudy and damp end to the day for the most of us. Some clear spells persisting across northern parts of Scotland, perhaps eastern parts of England as well. But we see this weather front arriving in the northwest into the early hours of Sunday morning, bringing some heavy rain in places. Generally a mild night for the most part, but turning a little chillier where we see those clear spells, perhaps even a touch of frost to start with across eastern parts of Scotland. Otherwise, to start on Sunday, generally a cloudy and damp day, particularly for western parts of Scotland. This band of rain perhaps turning heavy at times, particularly over any high ground. And for northern England and Northern Ireland too, generally a very cloudy and bit of a damp start to the day. For central, southern parts of England, parts of Wales, southwest England as well, generally a bit of a dry start, albeit quite a cloudy start. There will be some clearer spells, particularly across eastern parts of England. We might see some sunshine here through the morning, but for the most part, it will be a cloudy start to the day on Sunday. That weather front across parts of Scotland sinks its way south and eastwards as we go in towards Sunday afternoon. And for the most part, it'll be another cloudy and damp day for many of us. However, behind that frontal system, across Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland, there will be some brightness through the afternoon. Temperatures up a touch compared to what we saw on Saturday, highs of 14 or 15 degrees in the south. Into the start of Monday, that weather front clears away towards the southeast, and then it does leave a much brighter day than we've seen recently. High pressure very much in charge, bringing us those settled conditions and plenty of sunshine on offer, particularly compared to what we've seen over recent days. That sunshine looks like it's lasting into Tuesday and perhaps Wednesday as well, and those temperatures are still around about average, but feeling pleasant in any sunshine.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark Meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for your emails about tonight's topics. Peter says, this country is fast becoming the sewer of the Western world, made worse by the woke left and the liberal elite. Iris says, would the panel object so much if the migrants were white Europeans?
Yes,
I
absolutely.
Don't think so.
I would.
I am 75 and went on a pro-Palestinian march. We object to the killing of innocent children and unarmed civilians, also journalists, aid workers and doctors.
Just not not the ones being killed.
Thank you.
And
Can
actually,
you...
I think you'll find, Iris, that some of those so-called aid workers are actually Hamas dressing up as these people. Now, there is a real problem there going on in Israel, and it ain't easy for them, but... there's another comment here. Sylvia in South Shields says, would Kai like 300 illegals at the end of his street? She says, I feel intimidated walking past 20 standing around our high streets with their faces covered.
Yeah.
I've got a homeless shelter very close to where I live, and also I think lots of refugees are put there, so I wouldn't mind that at all.
And can I just say, this is not a race issue, by the way.
All right. Who's going to go next, then?
Well, I think I'll have a go. Darren?
Oh. Right, well, we're going down under with Willie.
Big Willie.
Willie down under.
I was waiting for the Willie double entendre. In any government, the Foreign Secretary is almost inevitably the most boring person on the books. And rightly so. The entire job depends on not rocking the boat, which is why it's a bit concerning that we have a deranged, dim-witted, woke zealot in the UK's top diplomatic job. This is a man whose only discernible talent appears to be sparking diplomatic crises wherever he goes, from Israel to Armenia. Now, I don't really care about the UK's relationship with Armenia, but I do care about the UK's relationship with the United States. And it's well known that Lammy has previously said, and I quote, that Trump is a racist, KKK, Nazi sympathiser. He said he would chain himself to the gates of Downing Street to disrupt a Trump visit. Now, look, he came back this week and he said, well, that's old news, which is somewhat ironic given that he's quite keen on some old 200-year-old news about slavery and reparations. That being said, he is so patently unfit for this job. His role is untenable. His judgment has been shocking, and make no mistake, we will need judgment in this role with very serious conversations to be had, particularly around tariffs with the United States. And I'll tell you what, it isn't potentially off to the best of starts if you look at this clip here. Eventually.
The British Labour Party accused of interfering in this election. Will that damage the special relationship?
It's certainly not a great start, because it's clear what they're doing, and it's absolute lunacy what I see going on in the UK right now when they're jailing people for misgendering someone. I mean, it's honestly, it's disgusting, and they should be ashamed of themselves.
Well said. Now, whether or not Trump actually holds the grudge is beside the point. We know now that in a role like this, you need someone who can massage Trump's ego, who can flatter him. And what we've seen is if you can do that, he's actually pretty pliable. The sheer hatred that Lammy has towards Trump means that he will not be able to do that. To quote Leo Amory, speaking to a far better man than David Lammy, in the name of God, man, go.
Yeah, well, do you know what? I think it speaks to the political naivety of this student politics government. Yeah. You know, you would think Kai had assembled the cabinet himself. It's somewhere... It is, I would say that it... People were saying, oh, you know, this won't be too bad. Think Tony Blair, think back to the days of Blair. Well, actually, I would say that this is a Corbynista government. You know, 4-day working weeks, migrant crisis running rampant. The fact of the matter is they want to actually alienate our most important ally. I hope, frankly, and I say this as a proud patriot of this country, but I hope that Trump gives them what for.
Yeah.
I really do. On our behalf.
It's also part of that sneering leftist, you know, we know best, and we really are not interested in the little man, and Trump is one of the little men because he's a horrible racist. So it goes back to that as well. We're just going to pretend that these people don't exist, and if they do exist, we're not going to listen to them.
So, you know what, Will, you mentioned there the Labour Party went out to campaign on behalf, you know, Labour staffers went out to campaign for Kamala Harris. Guess who went out to campaign for Hillary Clinton?
Yes, I was, in fact, at Trump's inauguration in 2017, having thought, like lots of the left wing, that Clinton would win in 2016.
Kai, let's come to the chase. Should Lammy resign?
No, absolutely not. And the implication of what you're saying is that because of some colourful tweets, that the election across the pond should dictate one of our great offices of state. I think that's very telling. I mean, we're the UK, for God's sake.
But
I mean, are we really saying that is...
Colourful tweets. People are in prison as we sit here today for colourful tweets.
Yeah.
This man is...
It's not about the US influencing us. It's about what the job requires. The job requires diplomacy, and that is the antithesis of diplomacy.
Look. Has there been a slight case of Trump derangement syndrome amongst many British Labour MPs? Obviously, yes. You know, in the depths of the wilderness in opposition in 2017, lots of them said some pretty stupid things ahead of Trump's visit to the UK. Now, government changes things, right? And I think there's an awareness of that. And luckily, in Trump, frankly, we have a man who really listens to the last advisor he talked to, who's said a lot of colourful things himself, as we know. He's a big fan of Twitter. And I doubt his advisors are going to be in his ear telling him, actually, you need to know about the Foreign Secretary's previous tweets.
He knows about it.
But it doesn't matter. He should stay in post. And I think it looks ridiculous
I think this is completely embarrassing for the Labour Party. I think it's embarrassing for our country, first of all, more than anything else, that we have these student union politicians representing us. And if you're Trump and you're the President of the United States and you're sitting down with David Lammy, who has made these outrageous, unsubstantiated claims about you, do you think you're going to be favourable to those people and give them what they're looking for, and so they can parade it around going, look. And we've seen David Lammy this week kissing Trump's backside. It's embarrassing for them. Yeah. And if I was Lammy, I'd say, do you know what? This is our biggest partner in the world. We need to have somebody for the greater interest of our country. We need to have someone doing my job that can actually get us a great deal with America. And he's not the man.
Let's not deal with hypotheticals here. The data that we have is, look, he's eaten his humble pie. He's been for dinner at Trump Tower with Keir Starmer. The relationship is warm. Trump has spoken very glowingly about Keir Starmer, and that, frankly, is really, you know, in the America-UK relationship, the most important.
Well, hang on. If Donald Trump Jr. is saying that,
but if we're talking
that Donald Trump Sr.
Look, you're calling David Lammy embarrassing. Well, I've never seen a more jumped-up, over-promoted idiot than Donald Trump Jr.
Well, let's talk about someone else. Let's talk about someone else this Labour government has insulted, which is probably one of the smartest men in the world, the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, who is going to be a chief advisor to Donald Trump. These are two people who are going to be sitting very, very close to the president that we have insulted as a country.
That was petty. That was extremely petty. We're going to have to leave it there, Will, because I've got to get to a commercial break. We've got to keep the lights on in this building. Now, still to come... I shouldn't say that, because we did actually go off air earlier today. Now, still to come tonight, is banning the burqa a rights violation? Well, Kai's got some thoughts. And next, we'll discuss the government's inheritance tax for farmers. It's got me spitting feathers. Is the government going to kill Britain's food production just to appease Greta Thunberg? You're with the Saturday 5 and we're live on GB News.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Osama bin Laden issued a fatwa entitled World Front for Combat Against Jews and Crusaders, and President George W. Bush talked of a crusade on terrorism. In 2010, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula sent a parcel bomb to New York. It was addressed to Reginald of Chatillon. The addressee had died at the hands of Saladin in 1187. Those facts suggest that the long history of struggle between Christendom and Islamic caliphates remains relevant, at least to some militant Islamists. That being the case, perhaps we should all understand the past. General Sir Simon Mayle, a former Deputy Chief of the Defence Staff Operations, can be our teacher, particularly if we want to know in gory detail about battles to control Jerusalem, Constantinople, Vienna and the Eastern Mediterranean. His new book is called The House of War. It's an excellent read, which perhaps ought to figure in a national adult curriculum. And he joins me. But let's begin with the word crusade. What was it that drove Christians around Europe to want to cross to the Holy Land and seize Jerusalem?
Context and timing is really important to understand. It's been rather stereotyped as Christian aggression against peace-loving Muslims. The Islamic religion had burst out of the desert in the 7th century with the death of the Prophet Muhammad. And for the next nearly 400 years, had Christianity, Christendom, the Christian states absolutely on the back foot. It took the Holy Land, destroyed the Persian Empire, took the North Africa, which was Christian at the time, including Egypt, of course, took Spain all the way into Tours, Charles Martel. 100 years after the death of the Prophet, it expanded in an extraordinary state.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, welcome back to the Saturday 5. One of you at home's just reminded me I need to check my blood pressure after what Kai had to say, so I think I'm going to take my go now. Right, I want to turn to Britain's farmers, who have been roundly thrown under the bus by their own trade union, bowing to Labour's net zero zealots in a move that spells disaster for our food security. Now, their genius plan, they say, instead of protesting, is to negotiate with the government, a government that's steamrolling over these farms. Best of luck with that, I say, to that trade union. But why is Labour so fixated? Think about this. Why are they fixated with wrecking British farming? Very dear to many of you at home. Renewable energy expert Gareth Phillips, who said this to a law firm, he said, historically, farmers have been reluctant to grant leases for renewable projects. Landowners will now be much more incentivised to look at leasing land to renewable developers as a way of finding new income streams. Translation, my friends. I don't speak legal speak, but I can tell you what, it's as clear as day to me. Labour's tax policies are pushing farmers to either lease or sell their land for Ed Miliband's green hysteria, slowly eroding our own food independence. And meanwhile, we're locked into Ed Miliband's sky-high energy prices, where 10-year agreement, sky-high, that even the Tories that signed net zero refused to sign. The next 10 years, if the wind don't blow and the sun don't shine, well, we're up a certain creek without a paddle. And we're reliant on Europe for 12% of our power and gas. Now, imagine if Europe gets itself into difficulty, what's going to happen then? Net zero isn't just an economic chokehold, it's a tool for wiping out our farming backbone. Energy, my friends, is prosperity. Food security is survival. If Labour can't see that, I think it's high time the rest of us did. I'm begging you, Britain, wake up to the complete and utter act of national self-harm that is net zero. Now, that's my thoughts, and I think it's clear today, you know, this wasn't me saying this. This is a legal expert who operates within the sphere of renewable contracts, and he's saying, I know why this tax policy has been devised. It's devised to screw over Britain's farmers. Your party have mugged over Britain's farmers, and they're doing it. They say, oh, well, it's just about fairness. It's not. It's about pushing their green agenda.
That is ridiculous to make that implication. I mean, one expert does not a fact make, frankly. I mean, look, the agricultural sector, and, you know, my family come from a rural area where we had a farm many years ago. They have faced an assault in the last few years, it's true, and not just under this Labour government. I completely dispute that. But they're worried about badger culling, cost of living, the cost of industrial energy, as you rightly say, rise in fertiliser costs. It's all created a perfect storm for farmers.
Who was it that passed the Climate Change Act in 2008?
Well, presumably our Labour government.
Ed Miliband,
yeah.
yes. But what's he doing now? Making it 10 times worse. So who's responsible for making energy-intensive industry in Britain completely uncompetitive? The highest energy costs for manufacturers in the world. In the world.
Yeah, and that's the inheritance, frankly, that we've had from the last many, many years of Tory failure and incompetence.
I actually agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. You're both two cheeks of the same ugly old bottom.
But to add to it, what they've done with the inheritance tax, and this is where
Look at this graph here, Renee. Look at the UK. Look how wide that chart is there.
Extraordinary. It's embarrassing. In fact, Americans are showing this as an example of how far we've fallen.
2.5 times cheaper energy is in the United States of America.
Let's talk about these experts, by the way, because our energy secretary this week, or was it just the week gone by, put out a statement, didn't he, of an independent report, so-called, that happened to be where he was the sole owner or the major shareholder of the company that put it out. That's resignable.
Just briefly,
that's
Will,
resignable.
am I being completely, do you think I've got a tin hat here? I'm taking it from a legal expert who said that, by the way. But yes, I do. But am I, wearing a tinfoil hat in saying that actually this is behind their plans? This is why they're doing it?
Well, they're desperate, aren't they? They've set an unrealistic target and they've got an unrealistic time frame. They will do anything they possibly can. And I'll add a bit of a conspiracy onto this as well, but I think it's a legitimate one, and that is farming is so fundamentally British. These are families that often are 6, 7 generation farmers. I think this is just another attack on Britishness and on our history.
I agree.
Well, and I think that comes from that they think that farmers all live in the countryside in very, very big houses and make loads of money. And the truth is...
They're all James Dyson.
They're all James Dyson. The truth is that some of them work 365 days of the year, from 4 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, and make £13,000.
Well, this is really important as well, Renee, because the figures suggest that 1/3 of all these farmers are the ones that produce all the food for our country, which is putting our ability to survive on the line.
Okie dokie, my friends. We'll let the viewers at home decide. Send in your views. Right, but I'm afraid, last but not least... It is indeed Kai who is going to keep you, well, shall we say, awake at night.
Thank you very much, Darren. Yes, in a different part of the world across the sea, a right-wing measure to trample on civil liberties and religious freedom of expression is underway, set to go into force in January 2025. No, I'm not talking about Donald Trump's America. I'm talking about the chocolate-making capital of the world, neutral Switzerland. Yes, in a referendum recently, the Swiss people voted to ban the burqa. The order results from that referendum that was pretty close. It was won by the narrowest of margins, 51 to 48. Sounds eerily familiar, doesn't it? But look, just like their cheese, I think this Swiss proposal is full of holes. First of all, it seems to me incredibly heavy-handed. Now, the Swiss government will fine those in contravention of the ban £900. To me, it stinks of the kind of nanny state taxing we saw during the coronavirus pandemic for lockdown-busting parties. Secondly, the list of exemptions to this ban is endless. You can continue to wear the burqa because of native customs, because of adverse weather, because of health and safety. And this reeks of a PR plan by the Swiss government. It doesn't have any substance and doesn't hold water. But the third thing, and what galls me the most about this, is that only 5% of the Swiss people are Muslims, many of them from our closely allied countries like Kosovo and Bosnia, some from Turkey.
Okay.
But out of those 400,000 Swiss Muslims, only 21 to 37 women use a niqab and next to none wear a burqa. So this sounds like a witch hunt, and I'm going to call it out for what it is. Now, what's clear from these stats is that lots of Muslims are very well integrated in Swiss society. They shouldn't be punished for it.
All right, so if I tomorrow, we haven't got very long, it's coming to the end of the programme, but if I said tomorrow, I, as a Christian, want absolutely every single woman in the country to start wearing a habit, and I enforce that on people, would you be delighted?
If
would you
women
say that's an infringement on...
If women choose, as part of their religious freedom of expression, to wear a certain... to wear a habit or to wear a burqa, then they are allowed...
because they don't want to wear
But they're not dying in Switzerland. There's 21 to 37 women
We'll come back to that. We're running out of time there. We're going to come back. Right, we've got loads more to come tonight. We've got a former US Senator joining us in a minute to talk Trump. I'll see you after the weather.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's been a cloudy day for most of us, as it has been over the past couple of weeks. But there is some brighter interludes on the way as we head in towards next week. But before we get there, these weather fronts out towards the west of the UK will slowly push their way eastwards over the rest of the weekend before we see high pressure redeveloping and bringing us some brighter weather. Back to Saturday evening, though, and generally a cloudy and damp end to the day for the most of us. Some clear spells persisting across northern parts of Scotland, perhaps eastern parts of England as well. But we see this weather front arriving in the northwest into the early hours of Sunday morning, bringing some heavy rain in places. Generally a mild night for the most part, but turning a little chillier where we see those clear spells, perhaps even a touch of frost to start with across eastern parts of Scotland. Otherwise, to start on Sunday, generally a cloudy and damp day, particularly for western parts of Scotland. This band of rain perhaps turning heavy at times, particularly over any high ground. And for northern England and Northern Ireland too, generally a very cloudy and bit of a damp start to the day. For central, southern parts of England, parts of Wales, southwest England as well, generally a bit of a dry start, albeit quite a cloudy start. There will be some clearer spells, particularly across eastern parts of England. We might see some sunshine here through the morning, but for the most part, it will be a cloudy start to the day on Sunday. That weather front across parts of Scotland sinks its way south and eastwards as we go in towards Sunday afternoon, and for the most part, it'll be another cloudy and damp day for many of us. However, behind that frontal system, across Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland, there will be some brightness through the afternoon. Temperatures up a touch compared to what we saw on Saturday, highs of 14 or 15 degrees in the south. Into the start of Monday, that weather front clears away towards the southeast, and then it does leave a much brighter day than we've seen recently. High pressure very much in charge, bringing us those settled conditions and plenty of sunshine on offer, particularly compared to what we've seen over recent days. That sunshine looks like it's lasting into Tuesday and perhaps Wednesday as well, and those temperatures are still around about average, but feeling pleasant in any sunshine.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to win Christmas on us this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents, with a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. You'll get it all in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Catherine Richards and Jake Singleton-Hill featured on the reality show Love is Blind.
Well, Catherine and Jake are joining us now in the studio for Saturday Morning Live. Thank you very much for joining us. And this is perhaps not the end result that people might have thought that they'd be seeing at this point, because you were both on the show, but you didn't fall in love in the pods, did you?
No, we didn't. I rejected him.
You guys look great together.
Yeah.
Very happy as well. It seemed like you guys were really strong, and it almost seemed like Freddie, after he admitted to you that he'd cheated in the past.
I actually respected the fact that he told me up front. I didn't even want to have that conversation, obviously. That was a conversation that we got told to talk about. And I respected his decision, but I think he felt that I was holding this grudge towards him that she really doesn't like, and which was not, and he knew this, because off camera we had many conversations where I was like, thank you for owning up, like, we can just move on from this. But if anything, I think he just felt guilty the whole entire time, and he put that on me, which is fine, but yeah, there's obviously a lot that people don't see.
So for viewers who don't know, Love is Blind is where you go and seek love and romance, but you don't see who you're speaking to, right?
No.
So, Jake, why did you go on the show?
My parents actually met in a very similar way. So my stepdad was texting my mum. He'd basically stolen the number off of a friend because the friend had met my mum in Blackpool, and they were texting for like 6 months. They'd never met. So that premise of how they got together and the marriage that they had was stunning. And to build a relationship not based on looks, before you met. I just found that just incredible.
So do you believe in that concept? Is it lust or love at first sight?
It's weird.
It's a bit of both.
I think, it's definitely a bit of both. And I would say, as you get older, your looks will change, but your personality will stay the same.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Saturday night, and this is a barely coping Darren Grimes. You're welcome to the Saturday 5 with Dr. Renee, Will Kingston, Kai Wilshaw and Alex Armstrong. Plenty more to come tonight, including sex strikes. That's not me divulging my personal life. Cheese heists, Big Brother becoming real life, and why no one cares what celebrities think about politics. Who knew? It's 7 p.m, and this is the Saturday 5. Still to come tonight, before I make asthma look chic, Renee and Kai are going to lock horns over whether Kamala Harris lost the US election because of sexism and racism. And then we'll be answering your questions in Ask the Five. Please do send them through. I hope I've not missed any. gbnews.com/your say. First of all, though, we're going to get you Saturday night news with Sophia Wensler.
Darren, thank you. Good evening. It's just gone 7 o'clock. These are your latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. Your top story this hour, the Queen is set to miss remembrance events this weekend to ensure she makes a full recovery from a chest infection. Queen Camilla had hoped to join the royal family at the Royal British Legion Festival of Remembrance this evening and to honour the war dead at the Remembrance Sunday ceremony on Whitehall. This comes as Buckingham Palace has said the Princess of Wales would attend both the Remembrance Sunday service at the Cenotaph and the Festival of Remembrance at the Royal Albert Hall tonight. Boris Johnson has suggested that Donald Trump would certainly do a trade deal with the UK. The former Prime Minister said the US President-elect is offering economic hope, but that the government would be too pathetic to try to secure a deal. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage said the UK needs to roll out the red carpet for Trump and that America is our most important relationship in terms of trade. Farage also said he would help mend fences between Sir Keir Starmer's government and the incoming Trump administration following tensions over previous comments.
This is a pro-British American president. That gives us potentially huge opportunities if we can overcome the difficulties that the whole of the cabinet have been rude about him. I might be useful as an interlocutor, unofficially, behind the scenes, to try and help mend some of those fences. If the government choose to use me, I would do that, not because I support the Labour government, but because I believe in something called the national interest.
Meanwhile, Joe Biden has invited Donald Trump to meet him in the White House next week. The sitting president and the president-elect will meet in the Oval Office on Wednesday. The post-election invitation is a tradition held between the outgoing and incoming presidents. Back in the UK, the Deputy President of the NFU, David Exwood, has said there's many things wrong with the budget and it's threatened food supplies. This comes as farmers are planning a protest in central London on the 19th of November. It's in response to Rachel Reeves's changes to inheritance tax on farmers. Speaking at the Lord Mayor's show today, Mr Exwood told GB News about how the NFU are feeling.
NFU is representing farmers in the way it does best by working on how to change MPs' mind. And there's many ways of doing that, and we will keep doing that. And everybody wants to play their part. Again, farmers are united and they're determined. I want to be really clear about this. We know how we feel about it. We know the value of what we do, and we have got to bring that to the government, because this isn't just about tax. This is actually about backing British farming. And again, that's what we're going to do today. Send out a message about the importance of farming, the value we bring to the country, and how we want everybody to get behind farmers. We have to do that. There's no choice.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes. that you're in for a very lively hour.
Lively or deathly at this rate.
Yeah. Let's crack on with tonight's first big... Oh, well, actually, I want to go, first of all, back to what we were discussing around the burqa and Switzerland's ban of wearing that burqa with a fine, a penalty, if you actually wear it. Will is wet. Will, what have you got to say?
Willie's wet.
Willie's wet.
Willie's
God, hello, Ofcom. I completely agree with Kai. On the right, we can't just yell freedom when it's things we like and then ban things we don't like. We have to be consistent.
And how would it not be consistent?
This is a clothing choice. You should have the freedom to wear what you want to wear.
Is it a choice, though?
There is elements of cultural coercion, I agree with that, but very hard to establish that to the point where you ban it.
OK,
Renee?
so we've had a text from Cooperman who says that how come, then, you can't wear a motorcycle helmet in a shop, but you can cover yourself from head to toe and go wherever you want?
I think a shop should be allowed to refuse entry to someone wearing a burqa because that's a security issue, so I think that's reasonable.
So I think that's really interesting. So I think there are two things here. There's integration, and I don't believe in the Western society, if you're dressed head to toe in a burqa, you will ever integrate. You can't. And secondly, there's a security issue. We don't know who these people are, and they have been used in many countries across Europe to disguise terrorists.
I think libertarians, you know, I used to describe myself as one, but I think it's a very, very naive political thought process where actually you just say, live and let live. Well, actually, if you live and let live, look what happens.
More oppressive people come along.
The ideology of a really quite, I think, theological fascism.
Yeah, this sounds dangerously like the people who are trying to police speech and all the things that you go against, Darren.
Well,
yeah, but the difficulty is that when your culture is under attack and then you've allowed so much oppression, then you have to withdraw it to say, well, it's gone too far, it's gone too far. Then the libertarians get very upset about that. Oh, it's gone too far, we never meant for this. That's the problem. There's always got to be guardrails, and we do need to put guardrails in this.
Right.
I applaud Switzerland.
Thank you, Kai, for introducing that. I just wanted to get in some views there because people were upset that there weren't any. Right. Now, we'll crack on with that big interview I mentioned. Now, joining us all the way from the good old US of A, we've got George Allen. Now, George is a man who, by all accounts, and I've been told this on good authority, was MAGA before Trump, before he even had the cap. And I've got the cap here, look. I've got the cap here. Now, Allen's not only a former governor of Virginia and a US senator, but he's been waving the Conservative flag for years, long before it was fashionable, or as they'd say in Islington, problematic. Now, with Trump's lightning bolt of a victory sending the Liberal elite into meltdown, I've had to pay to check Kai into the Priory here in London. Now, we're here to chew the fat on what this second MAGA revolution could actually mean here in Britain, across that pond. So Keir Starmer, Stalin to his mates, is squirming because Trump's triumph puts a bit of a spanner in the works for his dreamland policies, especially the all-consuming obsession with net zero. This is something that my guest now thinks is nuttier than a fruitcake. So grab your popcorn and let's dive into what MAGA 2.0 could spell for a Britain that's been marching to the beat of woke politics and those costly eco schemes. So former Governor Allen let's see what he has to say, and offering a bit of American backbone, potentially, to keep our country from drowning in green promises. Thank you very much for joining me, former Republican Governor and Senator George Allen. George, can I start by asking you, what do you think is the reason for Trump's shock win? And I use the word shock because everyone said, oh, you know, Kamala, the Iowa poll said that Kamala was 3 points ahead in the polls and that actually she was going to romp home.
Yeah, well, I think the difference is that the people spoke. You see in our country, in the U.S., the main concerns were the economy, high prices of gasoline, of groceries, of housing, of electricity. All of those, you know, inflation, economy type issues. And then the other was a wide open border. And folks, particularly in these battleground states like Arizona, Nevada, they're right on the front lines. Georgia, the University of Georgia, nursing student who was killed by an illegal immigrant made Georgia a border state. I think Trump won North Carolina because of his brilliant leadership in bringing in Elon Musk to put in Starlink. To get communications after the devastating floods in western North Carolina. Then Pennsylvania and Michigan those are energy states. They knew, the people in Pennsylvania knew Kamala Harris would love to ban fracking. They know the Democrats are against coal and oil and natural gas, and that means fewer jobs, less economic opportunities. It's how they fund their schools and communities in Pennsylvania. Then you have the arrogance of the EV mandates, the government actually telling people what kind of car they need to want to drive. That meant a lot to the auto workers in Michigan. And then Wisconsin was, they're right next to Minnesota, which is ranked 41st as a good state for business. And they're accustomed to people leaving Illinois to go to Wisconsin because of their high taxes. So the point is, there was an uprising in the United States. The rural areas voted really strong for President Trump. And it's back to old Ronald Reagan's question, were you better off 4 years ago than you are now? And most people recognize the policies of the Trump administration was more, we were more prosperous, costs weren't as high, we were safer, we didn't have a wide open border, and people were happier. And so you compared that to the way things were, where at least 2/3 of Americans felt that the country was on the wrong track.
George, just before I bring in the rest of the panel, I wonder, can you set out your argument of some people might argue that this was actually a sexist and racist vote against Kamala Harris, and that actually people couldn't stand the fact that she was a woman and that she was a woman of colour?
Well, people like to make history in the United States, so the fact that she was a woman of color and it would be the first woman president, that's not what hurt her. What hurt her is the simple question on a favorable show, what would you have done differently than President Biden the last 4 years? And she said, I couldn't think of a thing. In fact, President Trump got the Republican Party, there's a transition going on now, and I think it's very beneficial in that the Hispanic vote was really strong, the highest it's ever been for a Republican. African-American or black men voted stronger than usual, as well as Asians. So there's a lot of new coalitions formed in this, and it's not based on race or ethnicity or religion. It's based on common sense conservative ideas that are foundational to our country from the days of Thomas Jefferson on through Ronald Reagan until now with President Trump. On lower tax, reasonable regulations, productive energy policy, and a strong national defense, including securing and controlling our border.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, right, we're going to get the rest of the panel in vision now. Now, George, I wonder, could you explain how you see it with... There are whispers now that the European Union may well start buying its gas from the United States of America. Now, as you mentioned, George, and as you're well aware...
Less gas?
To actually buy more gas, to actually start, to start getting it in from the United States of America, because of the fact that, as you mentioned, the United States had a shale gas revolution, and actually, if you look at since President Trump, when President Trump did pull the United States out of the Paris Climate Accords, actually carbon emissions went down faster in the United States than they did in the European Union. That's thanks to their use of gas, to relying on gas, this miracle under their feet. Just how important do you think it is that Europe as a continent, for its own security and actually for the security of financial security of its citizens, starts to get sensible on energy policy?
Great points, all of them, Darren. I wish you were here. I hope people in the United States are listening to you as well. First of all, the fact that hydraulic fracking and horizontal drilling and the shale gas revolution is part of the creativity and innovation that you get from the private sector. It wasn't created by the government. It was the ingenuity of entrepreneurs. We thought we were running out of natural gas 15, 20 years ago. Now we have an abundant supply. President Trump, I think on day one, is going to stop this pause in permitting of liquefied natural gas facilities from the U.S. Energy is the lifeblood of our economy. It means jobs, it means competitiveness. Natural gas in particular is the feedstock for making fertilizers, chemicals, glass, plastics, tires, metals, and obviously it could be used for cooking and it could be used for generating electricity. so many of the European countries were captive customers of of Russia. And if you look back in history, one of the reasons that Ronald Reagan, along with Margaret Thatcher and Pope John Paul, but Margaret Thatcher and Reagan together stopped the Soviet Union as they got the Saudis to increase oil production, which dropped down by having a higher supply. The prices went down, and that's what funds not just Iran, but funds the Russian military machine. So it matters in a geopolitical way, in addition to just heating our homes and running our factories. So, the European countries, to the extent they can get LNG, liquefied natural gas, they can get it from the United States. That's important, that it's not just good for the U.S., it's good for our allies in Europe, as well as countries like Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan that have to also import a lot of LNG and coal, because they don't have the energy resources in those countries. And they can get it from the US, or they could get it maybe from Qatar or Australia. But, I'd love to see a US-UK trade agreement, free trade agreement. It'd be great for both countries. And part of that for the European Union is also to export LNG to them for their economies. We do export, I'm here in Virginia Beach, we have exported a lot of coal into Germany, because Germany, foolishly shut down, in an overreaction to Fukushima, shut down their nuclear. Then they realized that the intermittent, costly absurdity of thinking you're going to run your economy on wind turbines and solar, which work at best a third of the time. They needed to keep their coal plants going, which is fine. You want reliable electricity, but we export a lot already out of this. But we can do more.
And we want more. We need more. Now, actually, George, I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you, because on the panel right now, we have someone that campaigned for Hillary Clinton, believe it or not. Now, Kai, I have to ask you, what you've heard there, that sounds like common sense to me, actually. You can't power an economy and actually bolster Europe's vital security, not just economic, but actually defence, on wind turbines and solar panels.
That's one view. It's not my view. I think that net zero and the low-carbon economy is going to increase our security. But what I'd like to know from the
let
government
me ask you this, Kai. Let me ask you this so I can learn from you all. Here in the United States, when they have this net zero transition and all this, and they have offshore wind, which really doesn't work any more than 3 out of 7 days of the week, solar that works maybe a quarter of the time at most. But what's happening is you get higher electricity prices, and it's very regressive. The people hurt most by having to pay hundreds of dollars more every year in gasoline prices or electricity prices are lower income working people.
Exactly.
And it's a very regressive approach, which also makes our country less competitive internationally if those inputs for agriculture or for manufacturing are unnecessarily increased because of government.
And George, we've actually got a graph, a chart rather, that shows the massive scale of the price in this country, where the United Kingdom there is at the very top. You can see that on your screen now, George, where actually, the average electricity price for industrial users, look at the United Kingdom at the top there, way out as a massive outlier. That's the future that Kai Clinton wants to happen in this country.
You know that Europe and Britain have been impacted to a much greater degree than the United States by the Ukraine war, right? That is one of the major reasons for the price increases we're seeing. But what I wanted to ask was, are climate plans under a Trump government dead in the water now? Is that where we're headed?
President Trump, I've heard him say it live and in person. He calls it the green news scam. And it is a scam. It's the oligarchs all thinking that we're going to run our economy on windmills. The ships that come in to your ports, as well as the ports here in Virginia, aren't run on sails. They're not sails ships anymore. They're powered by engines. And so I think solar can be supplemental. I'm not against solar, but to think you're going to run your whole economy on something that only works if 20% of the time, it's not going to work. And so, and I do think, and Darren brought it up. I think Trump will get us out of that Paris Climate Accord again, because that's not good for the sovereignty of our country.
Oh, well, it's not good for us
our
either.
Competitiveness, and it's a waste of money for a bunch of whimsical ideas.
Very, very brief remarks, because we've got to move on.
Senator George, do you think that the approach of Trump to net zero will have any influence on the cultists that are running our net zero plans here?
Sorry, we speak the same language. I didn't understand it, though. What's the question again?
Do you think that Trump's opinion on net zero will have any effect on Keir Starmer here and his approach?
Well, you know better than I do, ma'am. I would hope that common sense breaks out and practicality and reasonableness breaks out throughout the world. And when you think of what you want in electricity or in energy is something that is affordable and reliable. And what's affordable and reliable, generally speaking, right now are natural gas, coal, and nuclear. Now, nuclear costs more, but for base load, if you want emission-free energy, nuclear is the way to go. And I see some...
And much smaller.
Small modular reactors. We have nuclear aircraft carriers here and subs. And we, the technology... It'll probably be another 10 years away, but we ought to do things that are practical for the people. And
I agree, George. Listen, that's what it's all about. That's what the revolution is all about. People power. And we need more voices like yours, George. So you're welcome in the United Kingdom anytime you like, just not at Kai's house.
Anyway, all y'all are welcome to come to the U.S. and stay strong for...
We'll come to Virginia. Former Republican Governor and Senator George Allen there. Thank you very much to him. Still to come tonight, sex strikes, cheese heists, Big Brother becoming real life, and why no one cares what celebrities think about politics. Next up, though, it's a Saturday scrap. Renee and Kai will battle it out. Did Kamala Harris lose the US election because of sexism? You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
I'm joined now by an acknowledged authority on Ludwig van Beethoven. He's already written 7 books on the subject, and next week his 8th is released. It's called In Search of Beethoven, and it stands apart as a deeply personal account of John Souché's relationship with the great composer as he follows his footsteps from Bonn to Vienna. Yes, I introduce author, journalist and classic FM presenter John Souché.
Hello, Michael.
It's delightful to have you here, and you have, as I say, written now 8 books on Beethoven. So the question is, why Beethoven?
Well, the word that is often used that I don't like is obsession, obsessive, because somehow there's something not quite right about that. The word that I use is passion. I have a passion for this man's life and music that began, I suppose, around 50 years ago, sometime in my early 20s. I can't remember the exact moment. He kind of crept up on me, and suddenly, as I was a journalist, TV journalist all my life, but before that I was a failed musician. I wanted to be a professional musician, but fortunately for the world of music, I realised I didn't have the talent. But this man's music crept up on me, and I knew from then that it would not go away, it would only increase, and that is what's happened. There are other composers I will listen to, minor names like Mozart, Wagner, Haydn, but Beethoven just does it for me. I was highly educated musically at school because I loved it, to the extent that I wanted to turn professional, but as I say, I didn't have the talent, but that has stayed with me. I read music, I understand music, as you say, I play the trombone, in those days to quite a high level.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Someone has just messaged in to let me know that I look rough, which is very kind. It was my granddad, who used to be my friend on the message board, but now he's really let me down. I actually thought, you know, I can't win. I either look like Casper the Ghost or whatever else, a clown. I've had that once or twice, and now because I've got a cold, I look rough. Someone else says... James said, Darren has no idea what this guy is saying, as in Senator, the former senator. Strong American accent, that. And Sylvia piped in. Good for you, Sylvia. She says, Darren is a fellow Geordie. We are used to weird accents. So there you are. I could understand what he was saying. I could.
He couldn't understand me.
No, he couldn't understand you, yes, yeah. Right, OK, now it is indeed time for a little bit of this, because here's what we've got coming up. Tonight's main event. Yes, indeedy. It's the Saturday Scrap. And this week, GB News viewers might be interested to know that Charlie Rowley brought me back this from Trump Tower. Trump Tower. So, Renee and Kai are going to battle it out over this question, my friends. And the question is this. Did Kamala Harris lose the US election because of sexism or indeed racism? Ask yourself that. Seconds out. Who's going first, by the way?
Kai.
I volunteered myself.
All right, seconds out. It's round one. Ding, ding, ding. Take it away, Kai.
Now, let me be very clear right from the outset. I'm not going to say that Kamala Harris completely lost the election because of those two factors. But what I will say is that it definitely was a factor. Now, on the one hand, I think the left do need to take a hard look at themselves because when elections are this decisive, when we have a landslide like this, it can only be one answer, and that is that there was a lot that went wrong. But there's also a lot that went wrong for Kamala Harris, and I don't think we can put this all on her door. She inherited a mess from, a mess of an economy, inflation skyrocketing. She was the victim of fortune. But when the Donald Trump campaign appeals to racism in the same way that we've seen in his previous campaigns, and appeals to sexism in the US, then it can only be that it has factored in. Donald Trump said that Kamala Harris became a black person recently. He, of course, as we know, said the Haitian migrants in Ohio were eating cats and dogs. He called a speaker at his Madison Square Garden rally in the last few weeks of the campaign called Puerto Rico an island of garbage. Now, you can't look at the laundry list of racist things that Donald Trump has said, or others around him have said, as well as the, quite frankly, sexist and dangerous measures that his government will take against women's rights. You can't look at all those things and tell me that it wasn't a factor in the campaign. I would ask the question back to Renee, is America actually ready for a female president? I'm not sure we can say that.
OK. I'm going to start where I wasn't going to start because of what you've just said. So I love this approach that Donald Trump is damaging women's rights. And yet it's the left and Kamala, and this is one of the reasons why she lost, is damaging women's rights by allowing men to put on a dress and take women's jobs on a board, by allowing men to put on a dress and compete against women in sports so that they can no longer win their medals, by allowing men to use women's safe spaces. So don't talk to me about women's rights. Now, I'll go back to where I was going to start before you riled me. Anti-Trump, that's all her campaign was. She had a negative campaign where she just tried to do what you've just done, call him a racist, talk about him eating cats and all of that kind of thing. And people don't want that. They wanted policies. She didn't have policies. And when they asked her about policies, she gave word salad, loads of word salad. Even in her resignation speech, she gave word salads about the billion stars shining down. Then the mess that she talked about that she inherited, she was the cause of it. She was the VP. It was her mess with Biden, and she was talking about change, but also endorsing everything that Biden had done. So she wasn't talking about change. She was talking about more mess. Then, of course, there were the three cult issues: illegal immigration, net zero, and then there's the cost of living that was affected by those. She was a zealot for net zero. She was a zealot for immigration, because that's who votes for Kamala. And she was also a zealot for the trans ideology that is destroying women's rights. So all of those things, people said, no, we don't want this. We are normal people who want to be able to afford to put petrol in our cars and food on our table. This, my friend, is why she lost. Not because she's black and not because she's a woman.
Only you could make this into a debate about trans issues. I mean, really...
Oh, really?
I agree with you. There's a lot on her plate here. There's a lot that needs to be looked into. This campaign wasn't the best it would have been, but would we be able to put together a campaign that's any good in 100 days? I mean, she really was handed a poison chalice. But to my mind, there is no doubt, especially after what we saw with Hillary Clinton's campaign, there's no doubt that America isn't quite ready to go there yet. Now, I'm not calling Americans racist. I love America. I've been campaigning out there. I spent a lot of time there. But I am saying that there's no doubt those played in to why her campaign lost so catastrophically and why they lost over 10 million Democratic votes since Biden's election. I mean, are you really telling me you think it's not a factor at all?
I really am.
There's nothing to do with sexism. Not one voter was swayed by the fact she's a woman or by the fact that she's a black woman.
No,
not one. Not one. That is, that's ridiculous.
They've had a black president. They don't have a problem with black people running their country. That's a ridiculous
But you
argument.
can't point at one success story and then use that to argue that nobody else was impacted by her being a black woman. You're saying that not one voter was. I found that astounding. Do you want to say that again? I mean,
I'll say it again. Yeah, no, I'm not embarrassed.
Not one. Yeah. I think that is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. We all know it's complicated, right? When that many people go a certain way...
Do you know what? Can I just come back on the one thing you said about she only had 100 days to compare her campaign? She was the one who stood behind Biden and denied that he was ill. So she has no one else to blame but herself for the 100 days that she got.
And on the border, Renee, she was actually made border czar at the start of the Biden administration. So the idea...
Well, she was good. She opened them.
Well, she did. She did. Maybe that's why Kai thinks that all Americans are racist, because they want to shut their borders. Is that it?
She wasn't given that role straight away. She was given that as something to raise her profile ahead of the election that they saw maybe going the wrong way.
You just admitted that it was all for pretend. It wasn't real. Well, they had no aspiration to close the border.
Vice presidents, do they have much of a profile? Often they're put out to pasture for a little while. It's a nice job where you cut ribbons and that kind of thing. I mean,
you are wearing that hat. Are you a racist and a sexist?
Well, look, I'm totally unbiased. I'm wearing this hat, of course. But, you know, I mean, look, it's the greatest insult to the electorate to say that people didn't vote for somebody based on their gender, their race, their identity in total. People don't care about these issues. They care about the things that Renee has highlighted. Illegal people flooding the borders. They care about the economy being strong. They care about sensible policies that are going to make them more wealthy. And what Kamala Harris did was insult the American people to the extent where they completely and utterly rejected her. It's been a landslide election for Donald Trump. It was an absolute trashing for Kamala, I think.
That's quite good.
He is actually really good at it. Will, Ali says the dude lost and knows it with the amount of gulping he did as he spoke. The left only have racism and sexism or any other ism to throw at people. They need to change the record. I said before the election, if Trump won, that this would be the charge, that there was racism and sexism at play here. And what did they do?
Yeah, look, and it's not going to change. They're going to keep doing this. If they weren't going to change after the first Trump win, they're certainly not going to change now. The reality is she was the weakest candidate in modern American political history. That is the reality.
I agree.
That's the start of it and the end of it.
Kai seems to think, though, Will, that 4 years as vice president isn't enough of a ramp to launch a presidential campaign.
It certainly is if you're good enough, and it has been for many, many presidents in the past, yeah. Well, yeah, it's there if you're good enough, and also in many instances when you are not good enough.
I mean, he seems to think that they need as long as Hillary Clinton had, which was decades.
Fair enough, yeah. Look, that's a new one, gulping. Last time I got in trouble for clicking my pen, so I'll try not to annoy the viewers too much.
Oh, don't worry, Renee can be quite scary once she gets
claws in.
Okie dokie. Right, now we're going to get to, in a second, no topics being off limits because it's going to be Ask the Five, and you can get your questions in on gbnews.com/your say. Next up, we're going to rattle through the biggest stories of the week in bunch of 5. Biggest to us, they could be fun. And they are indeed, because we're talking about sex strikes, cheese heists, Big Brother becoming real life, I'll tell you this clip, and why no one cares what celebrities think about politics. Gary Lineker, that's you. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's been a cloudy day for most of us, as it has been over the past couple of weeks, but there is some brighter interludes on the way as we head in towards next week. But before we get there, these weather fronts out towards the west of the UK will slowly push their way eastwards over the rest of the weekend before we see high pressure redeveloping and bringing us some brighter weather. Back to Saturday evening though, and generally a cloudy and damp end to the day for the most of us. Some clear spells persisting across northern parts of Scotland, perhaps eastern parts of England as well. But we see this weather front arriving in the northwest into the early hours of Sunday morning, bringing some heavy rain in places. Generally a mild night for the most part, but turning a little chillier where we see those clear spells, perhaps even a touch of frost to start with across eastern parts of Scotland. Otherwise, to start on Sunday, generally a cloudy and damp day, particularly for western parts of Scotland. This band of rain perhaps turning heavy at times, particularly over any high ground. And for northern England and Northern Ireland too, generally a very cloudy and bit of a damp start to the day. For central, southern parts of England, parts of Wales, southwest England as well, generally a bit of a dry start, albeit quite a cloudy start. There will be some clearer spells, particularly across eastern parts of England. We might see some sunshine here through the morning, but for the most part, it will be a cloudy start to the day on Sunday. That weather front across parts of Scotland sinks its way south and eastwards as we go in towards Sunday afternoon, and for the most part, it'll be another cloudy and damp day for many of us. However, behind that frontal system, across Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland, there will be some brightness through the afternoon. Temperatures up a touch compared to what we saw on Saturday, highs of 14 or 15 degrees in the south. Into the start of Monday, that weather front clears away towards the southeast, and then it does leave a much brighter day than we've seen recently. High pressure very much in charge, bringing us those settled conditions and plenty of sunshine on offer, particularly compared to what we've seen over recent days. That sunshine looks like it's lasting into Tuesday and perhaps Wednesday as well, and those temperatures are still around about average, but feeling pleasant in any sunshine.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes and Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5, my friends. It's time for this. Yes, indeed, a bunch of 5, and we're going down under to start us off.
Yeah, guys, the lefty meltdown after the election has been delicious, hasn't it? My favourite example of the genre have been a growing group of women on social media who are looking to punish men by going on a sex strike. Now, I'm actually not against the political sex strike excuse whenever I'm in a bit of a dry spell, but it would appear that these women are sincere. Now, look, we're all thinking it, I'll say it. It's probably for the best that these women are not procreating anyway, so I'm all for this, but I'll go to the group. Is this a rational response to the election team?
Can I say this is natural selection at its perfect, its most finest? And Conservative women have come out actually today and said that they are going to have babies. So I think that this day, like, we're just going to have loads more kids. So natural selection will outbreed them.
If I had my way, we would just have Dr. Renee cloned and then, you know, popping them out like you wouldn't believe. Right, Kai, what do you think about this? Are you going on a sex strike in the name of Kamala?
No, even though I like it as an excuse. Look, I mean, I've also had it up to here with the sort of Instagram story poetry stuff and, you know, people melting down, completely crying in the street. That's not the real left.
That's just a Saturday for you.
I mean, they get out, you know, knocking on doors, but they were not the people who were knocking on doors. I can tell you that for nothing.
So you think it's pathetic?
It's a bit nuts, isn't it?
I'm afraid you all are. You're on All right, Renee, what have you got?
OK, I've got a photo for you that when I saw this week, it summarised for me everything that Kamala did to alienate normal working people with families. Here we are. This is the US Assistant Secretary for Health and four-star Admiral Rachel Levine, top of the pile in Kamala's government, and the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Fuel and Waste, who went to France to represent America at a soiree at the embassy there. It's ridiculous. Look at these people. They are men. No one could mistake them for women, whatever they tell you. And yet Kamala and her government want us to believe that they are women, and we mustn't believe what our eyes are telling us. This, Kai, is why she lost.
Well, that's almost as ridiculous as saying it was because of racism and sexism, don't you think? Look, to say it's about such a fringe issue, and I think we do this here as well,
Only
this focus in these circles as well on trans ideology, as you call it, I think it way blows this issue out of proportion, and it does a disservice to the people like those people you just put up on screen who just try to live their lives, frankly.
Do you think?
I really do think
that Rachel
I don't think it's
would
right.
have been elevated to the
And I don't think
that?
And I don't think if, as we've talked about, Americans were being hit in the pocket, rising food prices, rising gas prices, and you think that really clinched it for Trump was...
I think in the minds
of people. Did, because people were thinking, I don't want these people. I don't want this issue pushed down my throat every day. I want to know where I'm going to get my next paycheck.
I don't think it was the left pushing that issue down.
The most effective...
Case in point. Was it there? Case in point. I don't know how many times I've talked about trans issues with you guys.
So, hang on. Sport...
Let's give them a break.
Sport, schools, education. You think... the right has been the ones pushing all of this in all of those areas.
I do.
I think I've never heard anything quite so backed in all my life.
Since I was last on.
This is the annoying thing with the left with culture wars. They will start a culture war. The right will then try and conserve, because that's what they do. They conserve things, and then you will be accused of being the ones that are trying to change the culture. It's a nonsense.
Right. Now, you might have heard of a programme called Big Brother. It seems to have had more iterations than the Sugar Babes, but it's back on air, apparently, on the ITV. The ITV? I sound about 60, don't I? Now, on ITV, of course, Big Brother being very much reminiscent of Orwell and the censorship that was set out in 1984, well, I actually think that Big Brother and their ITV woke, nutty response to one comment actually shows a real step in that direction. Have a little watch of this.
You chanted, "Stop the gloats," which you confirmed was in reference to the political phrase, "Stop the boats."
For me, it was just like funny because it rhymes, and especially because Nathan is someone with you know, I don't really joke about politics that often because I'm not interested in, but it was a joke. But it had no like racial connotations. It's a political slogan.
Do you know what, ITV? How about you take your head out of your backside and recognise that this country wants to stop the boats? If someone, some poor lass, wants to make a joke about stop the gloats and rhyming it with stop the boats, let her, because that's what we all think. And the sooner that you brain-dead morons realise that, the better your viewing figures will be. Because I tell you what, we've had enough of it as a public. That's why the likes of GB News is doing well. Because people want an alternative that actually speaks for them, not to them, like we're all children. How dare you make that woman apologise like that? I think that is bullying on behalf of a woke mob with a lot of money, a woke corporate mob. That's what you are. Yeah, they be ashamed of yourself. I've got to make Kai come in because of course. I need some balance.
Look, it is a bit outrageous, isn't it? And do you hear that disturbing dystopian voice voice over the speakers, and you start wondering, you know, is fact really
But do you
stranger
think
than
saying
fiction?
stop the boats on a show like that, though, do you think actually making jokes about it, are you upset by the fact that jokes were made about it?
I don't get upset very easily, that's why I'm still on the show.
You said earlier you had your tiny violin out, you were saying, oh, they're coming over here, they've travelled so far. Safe countries.
I finally lost it. I wouldn't make jokes about it because I don't think it's fair to make a joke out of people's terrible plight.
So you agree with that on TV?
No, but I wouldn't have censored that. I'm not pro-censorship, but I wouldn't make that joke. I don't think it's right. It's an off-colour joke. It's not funny either.
Jokes are always off-colour. That's why they're jokes.
There are. It's art.
No one has a right not to be offended. I think you need to grow up.
I'm not censoring. Right, you can tell us getting to the end of the show.
Alex, what have you got?
Taylor Swift, you are a loser, okay? You're a huge loser. So is Oprah, and so is that guy, Rory Stewart. Have you heard of him? He's a loser, too.
So, listen, Americans have had enough. They rolled out the red carpet for every twerking P. Diddy list celebrity they possibly could, and they still couldn't move the needle 1 inch. In fact, it just went the other way. So have we finally in the West said no more to celebrities, shut up and do what you do best, which is put your pretty little face on the screen or sing down a microphone, whatever it is. Have you guys had enough, Kai? Have you had enough of these left-wing crazy celebrities yet?
I haven't.
You're a loser, Kai. I think you're a loser.
No. You know, I like a nice, well-timed endorsement, you know, to see one of the people that you really like come out, you know, but I don't think it makes a difference.
Clearly not.
I think in this case, it did reek a bit of 2016 for me, and I thought Clinton was going to win so much that I booked flights to the Donald Trump inauguration.
Did you do that as well, yeah?
And I did go. Not many celebrities there, by the way. But obviously, when
you watch,
feeling a bit like... I don't want to say that word.
They don't believe this.
Too much.
When what's the name of that foul-mouthed rapper called who was reading from a phone?
Cardi B.
Cardi B reading it from a phone because the teleprompter had gone down. She didn't believe what she was saying. She's there because our record label told her to be.
Yes.
No, we all know that when you know that there's a teleprompter there, you sort of don't really think about how you get into this.
And it's all money.
You should be able to say it from your chest. You should be able to say it from your chest.
Kamala Harris's campaign was the first $1 billion campaign.
Yes, it was. It was huge.
Look at all that money wasted. God. You could have had a hell of a lot of dinghies paid for that, Kai.
100 days, Darren. You know as well as I. She had an albatross.
Oh, yes.
She has an 80-year-old albatross over her neck.
What have you got for us?
Well, the Great British Cheese Heist enamoured the world over this last month when 22 tonnes of vintage cheddar was stolen from Neal's Yard Dairy. Now, an arrest has been made in connection with the case, and I think we'll all agree it's good to have a bit of Gouda news, and it's about Edam time. Now, while the case has no doubt been really harrowing for all those concerned, you might even say they were cheesed off, they have been inundated with orders and offers of support from across the world. Now, the cheesemaker at Trethowan Brothers Dairy was quoted recently saying, "Who wants that much cheese? What do you do with 22 tonnes of cheese?" And while I applaud anybody trying to house quite that much of the stuff, I don't think they'll be making a dent in it. They won't be left with just crumbs. But while, you know, the state of UK policing has meant that it's taken 3 weeks to get to this point, all I'm going to say is better late than never.
That was very cheesy.
It was very cheesy.
I tried to fit as many as I could in, just for
well
you.
done, well done. I actually think the 22 tonnes of cheese have been stolen because Kamala would have brought about World War III. We need all the food stocks we can get. Right, still ahead. We answer all of your questions in Ask the Five, no topic off limits. What hell have you unleashed upon us this week? Hopefully some cough sweets. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Amon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
This is reported in the Telegraph today, and
it's about being white or being coloured or being anti-racist. Is Monopoly a racist game?
This is an incredible story, actually, I have to say. I'm reading this from the Mail. It's in Telegraph as well, but from the Mail. Children should be playing Monopoly to learn about racial privilege, councils claim. White players should be given more money, spend less time in jail, and also be given a head start on buying property to convey inequality and white supremacy. And this all, I'm not making this up, and this all comes from a document called How to Raise Anti-Racist Children, which was drawn up for the Barbie manufacturer Mattel in 2020, and it's been endorsed, or at least circulated, by Leicestershire County Council, Southampton City Council, Lambeth London Borough and City of London Corporation, who apparently think this is a sensible way to go forward. I mean, for goodness sake, Monopoly is just a bit of fun, isn't it? Let's just enjoy it.
It's a wonderful example of how anti-racist thinking becomes racist. What they're saying is that white children should be given privileges on the Monopoly board.
Because they've got it in real life.
So that they learn that they already have privilege. Do we really think children are going to think that? Or do we really think children are going to think, oh, great, I have an advantage? White children are going to think, great, I have an advantage.
They're going to think, oh, no, I've landed on Mayfair and there's 4 houses there.
It's wonderfully stupid.
We've also heard it with nursery rhymes as well, though, haven't we? And mums and dads being told not to sing Bar Bar Black Sheep.
That's in the story as well, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's steeped in white culture. And what a lot of nonsense that is as well.
What are you meant to sing instead?
Well, Bar Bar, I don't know, White Sheep, perhaps, I don't know.
Or Rainbow Sheep or something.
Wah Wah White Sheep. You can say Wah Wah White Sheep as they play Monopoly with their privileges.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabelle Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. LW's just said that I should go on Big Brother and I'd win. I don't think so. I'd be cancelled quicker than ITV could say anything else. Stop the goats. Anyway, it's time for
Stop the goats.
Yes. Right, let's see what hell you've unleashed upon us. We're going to start with Trisha. Trisha says, I am an ex-Conservative, now Reform voting GB News watcher, but always wonder why the poor little lefty voice is so outnumbered. Trisha, that's nonsense. We have a robust lefty voice here on this panel. He just happens to be wrong.
Heard it all before,
just
Darren.
Just the balance. It's not very balanced.
Yeah, right.
I thought you were going to say I'm not very good
there. There's a certain regulator you might have heard of. And Philip says this. What do you recommend for a £10 Secret Santa gift?
A guinea pig.
Oh, my God.
A guinea pig?
For 10 quid. They're really cute.
Peter's coming after you after this show with Dr. Renee.
More than £10, isn't it?
No, you can get them on Gumtree. I've checked.
Will?
There's only one answer. A MAGA hat.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I was going to say that. Alex?
Oh, I don't know. Bag of sweets at this rate with inflation.
I reckon Boris's memoir will be discounted by Christmas.
Yeah.
Well,
I have actually seen it going down in the bookstore. It's on track.
GB News membership.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Right.
You can get that for
Colin
£5.
says, what's your opinion on pineapple on a pizza?
Disgusting. Absolutely. It should be illegal, along with banning the burqa. We should ban pineapple on pizza exactly the same time.
Has its place.
I love how you... Just merged the burqa.
Merged the burqa and pineapple pizza. Have you ever seen them in the same room?
Very difficult to do, eating a pineapple on a pizza in a burqa.
In fact, we're probably helping them, right? You know, it's a great thing.
Kai, are you pro-pineapple on a pizza?
It has its place. Sometimes you want a bit of sweetness, don't you? I think the more controversial one is chips on a pizza.
Oh.
And I've seen that. I've had that in Italy.
Who does that?
That's
disgusting. No.
I like cheesy chips, though. Is that not just the same thing?
No, come on.
They're separate foods entirely.
Right, yeah.
So uncultured on this panel.
Will?
Broadly supportive.
broadly supportive. This is what.
But Will's supportive of everything. He's a liberal. I mean, he's going to tell you.
These libertarians, they're leading us astray. They're leading us totally astray.
Oh dear.
We had a really good question from Ross. I'm so sorry, Ross. Ross says, I've got a question for you, my next. If you had to form a government right now, just from this panel, what positions would you assign to each other? Very, very quickly. Renee, who would you assign? I'm going to let Renee
You'd be the
go.
net zero czar.
Oh, I'd tell you, I'd abolish myself.
Alex is stopping the boats.
Yeah, they'll put me on the borders.
Yeah. And Kai is Minister of Woke. Right. Thank you very much for watching. Leo's up next. You won't want to miss that, my friends. I'll see you at same time, 6 p.m. next week.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's been a cloudy day for most of us, as it has been over the past couple of weeks. But there is some brighter interludes on the way as we head in towards next week. But before we get there, these weather fronts out towards the west of the UK will slowly push their way eastwards over the rest of the weekend before we see high pressure redeveloping and bringing us some brighter weather. Back to Saturday evening, though, and generally a cloudy and damp end to the day for the most of us. Some clear spells persisting across northern parts of Scotland, perhaps eastern parts of England as well. But we see this weather front arriving in the northwest into the early hours of Sunday morning, bringing some heavy rain in places. Generally a mild night for the most part, but turning a little chillier where we see those clear spells, perhaps even a touch of frost to start with across eastern parts of Scotland. Otherwise, to start on Sunday, generally a cloudy and damp day, particularly for western parts of Scotland. This band of rain perhaps turning heavy at times, particularly over any high ground. And for northern England and Northern Ireland too, generally a very cloudy and bit of a damp start to the day. For central, southern parts of England, parts of Wales, southwest England as well, generally a bit of a dry start, albeit quite a cloudy start. There will be some clearer spells, particularly across eastern parts of England. We might see some sunshine here through the morning, but for the most part, it will be a cloudy start to the day on Sunday. That weather front across parts of Scotland sinks its way south and eastwards as we go in towards Sunday afternoon, and for the most part, it'll be another cloudy and damp day for many of us. However, behind that frontal system, across Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland, there will be some brightness through the afternoon. Temperatures up a touch compared to what we saw on Saturday, highs of 14 or 15 degrees in the south. Into the start of Monday, that weather front clears away towards the southeast, and then it does leave a much brighter day than we've seen recently. High pressure very much in charge, bringing us those settled conditions and plenty of sunshine on offer, particularly compared to what we've seen over recent days. That sunshine looks like it's lasting into Tuesday and perhaps Wednesday as well, and those temperatures are still around about average, but feeling pleasant in any sunshine.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to win Christmas on Us this year. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5.